Welcome to Epic Agents, the Best in Real Estate podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Ham, and joining me today is Kayla Logue. She's an entrepreneur engaged in multiple enterprises. Kayla is a real estate broker licensed in 4 states. She's the founder of a nonprofit, and she's also adding author to her list of achievements with a forthcoming book being released here very soon. Kayla, really an honor to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
I'm excited too. I think that this is going to be a really cool conversation and a lot of value for our listeners who both are already high achievers in the real estate industry or those who are just starting out and just starting their journey in real estate. Your work is really, really interesting. But before we dive into the nonprofit, your book, your speaking, and all the stuff, share for listeners a little bit. I mentioned that you're licensed in 4 states, and there's a really good reason for that. Share a little bit about your real estate business.
Yeah, so it's a niche style of real estate. I work for a land development company. And what we do is we scout the country for the best property, and then we go in and we actually develop it. So on the side of that, we have an acquisitions team. We also have a development team. We put all the infrastructure in place, and then we actually create developments. And then it's my job as the agent to sell the properties. And of course, to be able to represent buyers in those different states. I have to have the license in those states. And literally it ranges from North Carolina, Tennessee, West Virginia, and Oklahoma. So completely different laws. It's really interesting, but the dynamic and what we do as a company is very similar. You know, from a small scale, just subdivision anywhere from 7 lots up to 350 lots. And then even Eagles Nest in Banner Elk, North Carolina has almost 1,000 lots. So really creating, I guess what's different about our company compared to other land development companies is we go in and we create communities rather than just go in and develop properties. So it's a little bit on both sides, but it's cool to be able to have that diverse background.
I'm based in North Carolina, as are you, and that, in fact, that's how we connected. And I'm familiar with the development, the community that your company developed in Banner Elk. It's magnificent. Banner Elk, of course, is a beautiful area of the country, one of the gems here in North Carolina for sure. What are the properties, just out of curiosity, what are the communities like in Tennessee, West Virginia, and Oklahoma? Are they similar style developments or are they different concepts?
So really, actually, Watauga Lake, Tennessee, we're heavily developing, and our developers have shifted a lot of focus over there. And we're kind of structuring it very similar to Eagles Nest. So it is going to be a community style. We're calling it like the Tuscany of Tennessee. And we have right now like a total of 6 developments over there. We've been over there for a couple years. And I will never forget when I went there for the first time. And it was very desolate. And what their vision was, like, I was newer to the business. I was like, I have no idea how we're going to pull this off. And within a year, the turnaround and the development and the stuff that we were able to do, keeping the really natural, picturesque, beautiful property that it was, but turn it into a place that is like highly attractive to want to come and visit and have everything you need in a really small location, but also the people that invest there in the community they're building in such a short period of time was incredible. I mean, truly incredible. And Watauga Lake is actually the 3rd cleanest lake in the country. It's a mountainous lake. It's stunning. I mean, we're around Lake Norman, and it's a fun lake, and it's also very pretty, but there, I mean, it's just a day and night difference. I think it's funny when I drive from Charlotte and go up there, especially when everything's blooming or in the fall. I literally feel like I'm in Jurassic Park because it's just it's so pretty and so natural. But also, like I said, we've got wineries, we've got vineyards, we have stores we're upgrading. So it's really unique.
The
And then,
Tuscany of Tennessee. I love that.
yeah, it's cool. But then I got all excited about that. But we have some big projects going up in West Virginia. We own 7 miles of literally river frontage on one of the coolest rivers I've probably also ever been on. We've got a big property and development going on over there in May. And we have some other projects around there called Fisher Mountain. It's on a golf course, one of the most highly rated golf courses in the country. Then we also in Oklahoma, Lake Eufaula, it's Oklahoma's largest lake. And there's certain pieces of properties we have out there where you could be on a lot and you can't see like to the other side of the lake. Like it looks like an ocean. So it's anyway, and as I'm going on and rambling, it's so diverse and so cool, but we really do find the most premium property and we bring to people what they're looking for. So it's really unique.
You really create some thoughtful and amazing communities.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, our developers do an incredible job with creating their vision and actually putting it to action.
I'll have to look up Watauga Lake. I haven't heard of that. It sounds amazing. It sounds like a very serene environment up there, and being the third cleanest lake in the country, I bet it's just gorgeous.
It is. And from here, it's only 30 minutes. So it's 30 minutes from Boone. So
Oh wow!
it's quicker to get from Charlotte area, Cornelius area to Watauga Lake than it is to get to downtown Banner Elk.
Oh
You
wow!
go straight through Boone. It's right over the North Carolina, Tennessee border. So it's not far.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. That's cool.
Yeah.
Wild and wonderful West Virginia. I bet that river is probably amazing. Does it have some rapids? I know that's pretty common in West Virginia.
Yeah, it's actually 20 minutes outside of Morgantown.
Uh huh.
And our newer development, well, it's not a necessarily newer development, but our newer phase of this development that we have a big project upcoming, like I said, in May. We have some of the most iconic waterfalls in the area that are now private to our owners in the development. So yeah, it's really, really cool. I mean, you don't see these type of waterfalls that you have actually private access to, I don't think, anywhere else. So
Wow.
it's also another unique project. It's one of my favorites. I'm excited about it. So
Yeah, that sounds really, really cool too.
yeah.
All right. Well, I digressed a little bit there, but I was really curious because I know I'm familiar, obviously, with Eagle's Nest and some of the work that your company does, and it's really just amazing work. So I want to take a minute to kind of share some more details about the other projects as well. We talked in another podcast interview for something I do locally here in the Charlotte area, and I've already forgotten which came first: the idea for your book or your nonprofit.
So it was my book that was first, and
Okay.
then the nonprofit kind of followed through my vision and ideas for the book.
Mhm.
And as I was really writing the book, is kind of when it started to unfold because as we spoke on our previous, I'm a big advocate of journaling, whether it's for personal development, professional development, and writing everything down. But through my writing and through sharing my journey of journaling, but also overcoming challenges personally and professionally, I was like, I want more of an impact. Like, I want to make this more personal and be able to reach more people. And so that's how the idea of the nonprofit kind of flew through as I was writing my book.
The name of the book is Always Squeezing Lemons: Taking Responsibility to Define Your Own Success. I think that's a topic and a title that's going to resonate with a lot of folks. Let's dive a little bit more into the inspiration for that book and kind of the journey between inspiration and executing on that idea, on that inspiration.
Yeah. So, really, I've always enjoyed writing. I went to school for journalism. I always kind of had an idea I wanted to write a book. I never knew what it would be about. And it never really unfolded until the summer of 2020. I was going through a lot personally and had no direction of what I was going to do professionally. And my sister advocated for me to start journaling. And I thought it was, again, the stupidest idea ever. But through that, I started writing things down. A lot of stuff started to unfold. And I ended up, working in this job in real estate, found a lot of success in it, but also was able to really identify my strengths and find confidence in that. And besides just a professional success, I started to be able to find personally what I defined as success, right? Like what I truly wanted, what I valued, really kept my morals as like number one rather than pushing traumas and stuff aside, started really processing that and understanding that titles or external validation or checking other people's boxes, as I say, was not my priority, right? It was learning and breaking down like really what I wanted and why I wanted it and who I wanted to become and who I needed to be now in order to do that. And I think that's just such a concept that we think of success as reaching this status, reaching this level, or shooting for this goal. And when I hit this, I'm successful. But that's not the case. It's truly not, right? Some of my highest moments, I felt low, and it's because you're not enjoying kind of the journey and the purpose and understanding the reason why to get to that point. And that's kind of really through my book, I intertwine learning experiences and mistakes and failures that helped me define what that meant to me. And all of our success, I would say, that's why I say your own success, because you can use my journey and experiences for your own journey, but defining and what that looks like for you is so different.
I recall from our other conversation that you had, prior to 2020, you had basically achieved what that, I guess, for lack of better words, that stereotypical idea, right? Ideal
Yes.
of success, and found it wasn't fulfilling, right? It was the wrong goal for you.
Exactly. Yeah. I would say I was kind of like put into the wrong box.
Mm-hmm.
I use a lot of metaphors, always squeezing lemons, talking about boxes. But yeah, I was married to a very handsome, intelligent young man. We were the life of the party, and we had a dog, we had 2 houses, I had a thriving Pilates career, and I was so miserable. And it was just, I was capped out. I'm a very independent, very strong-minded, very entrepreneurial brain person. And I lost all that. And I was confining to what I felt like I should be doing rather than taking a stance and focusing on building my own self. And I mean, now, like, I'm in a very healthy, happy relationship. I'm focusing on building and still taking big steps towards other stuff. But when you feel stuck, you're never going to be able to take those strides. You're never going to be able to define what success means because you don't even know what that looks like. So that's kind of where I completely changed routes, completely changed directions. And I wasn't in real estate then. So that was kind of a newer venture through me learning and overcoming all of this.
So something we didn't talk about in the other conversation we had for another podcast, and something I'm curious about, and it's kind of a curveball. I'm sorry I didn't prep you for this question ahead of time, but I'm curious to know, how did you get into the real estate industry from, managing Pilates studios to real estate? That's a big swing. How'd you do that?
Yeah, so it's actually a funny story. Not really funny, but it's an adventurous story. So, middle of 2020, I was still going through my divorce, kind of trying to figure out my whole life and what my next steps were, and really a lot of personal development through that time and COVID. So, the whole world was upside down anyway. And I spent that time being really intentional with what I was doing and where I wanted to go. I saw some friends and family I had in a long time. And I also started a social media company during that time to pay my minimal bills that I had. And my sister, that's actually now her full-time business, which is pretty cool. So anyway, I had a job lined up. It was for sales and marketing and also kind of around the social media stuff because I had created some connections, and it was for a startup down on St. Simon's Island, Georgia, where I'm from. And it would be a lot of traveling down through Florida. And I wanted to kind of start creating more of a routine because I'd been kind of being a modern day gypsy, bouncing around, seeing people up and down the East Coast. And I reached out to my godfather who lives on Lake Norman. And he is the owner of the development company that I work for. And he has a cat, and I know he hires somebody to watch his cat when he travels a lot. So I was like, hey, can I come watch your cat during, the month of January, get a little settled because I was moving down in February. Well, long story short, the last week of the month, I was literally moving to Florida at the end of like February 1st. This is the last week of January. He was like, I want to take you to lunch. Took me to lunch, told me, after the few conversations we had, he thought I'd be a great fit for the role and I would need to get 4 real estate license in a couple months. And then, seems like a great idea. And I was like, okay. I mean, to me, I was like, this seems like a better opportunity. I don't know anything about real estate. I don't know anything about that. I mean, I knew about it because my dad's been around the business and like I've been around this business. And I mean, I'm not trying to like brag, but I'm smart. I pick up on things quick, and I like to, when I'm trying something new, like I go 100%. So I knew I could do it. But I was like, I've never done this. So sure, why not? But it seems like a better opportunity. And so rather than that end of that week, I got all my stuff and I moved to North Carolina and started real estate school instead of moving to Florida and doing a marketing job. So that's how I got into real estate.
Kind of quick and by accident.
Yes,
Yeah.
100% completely by accident. It was the greatest decision I ever made, for sure. I mean, by a long shot. So I'm very thankful for, him seeing the potential. I always say he saw more potential in me in that time than I ever saw in myself. And I'm forever grateful for him for even, recognizing it, but giving me the opportunity to show it.
I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very cool. I appreciate you sharing that. I was really curious about how you how that happened. So that makes
Yeah,
sense. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's very random. It was completely off the wall, but like I said, it was. I always say take opportunities that feel right, like trusting your intuition. And sometimes a lot of the times actually it's not going to make sense, but if for some reason it's like, yeah, let's give it a go. Anytime I've ever trusted myself on that, it's always turned into something way better than to be expected. So
Yeah. Sometimes people close to us know us better than we know ourselves, right? And it sounds like your godfather really knows you very well, and just saw an opportunity that you would excel at. And so that's really cool.
yeah, like I said, I'm so grateful to him for that, and an opportunity. And I say this to anybody because you can take an opportunity and do nothing with it, or you can
Hmm.
take an opportunity and make a lot of it. And especially in sales and real estate, like if you want to get into real estate, you if you don't work hard and you don't understand what you're selling and really understand how to do it, you're not going to be successful. Like you don't get paid for just showing up. So it's it's going in and putting the work in and doing a lot of hard work. So
They're called producers for a reason, right?
it's very, very
You got
true.
you got to produce for
Yes.
sure. Well, that kind of leads us into the whole reason why I thought you'd be an amazing fit for this podcast, and that is the value that I think that you'll be able to bring our audience and some insights into some of the common challenges that we as professionals, and not just real estate brokers or those in this real estate industry, but those who in really any industry, but especially in a sales role, because the pressures and the expectations are so much different for a sales professional versus someone in a management or engineer, any other kind of role. It's really its own unique journey for sure.
Oh,
uh,
absolutely. For sure.
Few of those topics, there's four that we talked about before we started, and I'm going to start off with the first topic was something that every sales professional has to deal with, and every sales professional has to come to terms with, and has to do it quickly and get used to it in order to move forward in their career. Otherwise, it's going to be a really long and miserable career, or
Right.
maybe really short and miserable career.
Right.
And that is coping with rejection and the concept of rejection. Share a little bit of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I mean, gosh, my dad always said he thought I would be a lawyer when I was a child because I just wouldn't take no for an answer, right? So hearing the word no in general was that's not something that settled well for me, and it even still doesn't. But at the same time, my mindset behind the word no is completely different than it used to be, and I think naturally we as human beings, when we hear no, we just shut down, right? We just think it's the end. And quite frankly, in sales, anybody that's in sales and knows sales, you got to get to a no before you can get to a yes, right? Because at that point, when somebody says no, now you have an understanding of, okay, well, then why is it a no? What would be a yes? You have a different way of framing it. And you see rejection more as an opportunity rather than rejection shutting you down. And it truly is. And also, I think the biggest thing is not taking no personally. And naturally I think we do. And especially like I'm a very empathetic person. Like a lot of times I will be a people pleaser sometimes to a default. And especially when it comes to professional sides of stuff, if it's a no at that time doesn't mean it's always a no. I can't tell you how many people I've followed up with and had said no multiple times, but then they finally said yes, right? I've even had people that tried to purchase a property and they weren't able to do it at the time, but I was, of course, I'm like, well, dang, that didn't work out. But a year later it did. And I didn't take them not being able to purchase it then or saying no before personally. And I kept them as somebody that I would continue to stay in touch with. So seeing rejection as an opportunity rather than a complete shutdown is what you have to do, especially in sales.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult for a lot of folks in the sales profession. And speaking from experience, because I'm one of those people who, especially in the early part of my sales career, because as an entrepreneur, I've been self-employed for almost 2 decades and have started and run a couple of businesses. You're in sales. It doesn't matter what you call your business, the purpose of your business is to acquire new customers or to acquire new clients. So um, early on in my journey, I was very sensitive to a no, to
Mhm.
that rejection. And then through um, self studying and learning and absorbing the knowledge of those who are really really great experts in the industry, and through coaching and so forth, realized that it's not personal. They're not rejecting you; they're rejecting your offer. Or another example that I really really love, that someone that I've heard a few times, and I don't know who originally said this, but it's gold to me, and that is, a confused mind will always say no. If
Mhm.
they don't understand, sometimes it's not that your offer is bad, it's just that they don't understand your offer, or your
Right.
product or your service. Or so, to
And
your
that's
point, I think that becoming a little bit more of an investigator and digging a little deeper is really, really important.
exactly, yeah. So like when you do hear no, you don't just leave it at that. When there's no way, that's not you're not going to be able to break through or understand what the real objection is. If they just say no, or this is, not the right time. Okay, well then when is a better time, right? So what's the holdup now? What would, if you could purchase today, what would need to happen for that to happen, right? So there's a series of sequence of questions that change when you hear the word no. But if you just stop asking questions, then you're only hurting yourself significantly. And it is, as we even started it, this whole conversation with like higher expectations in sales, you can't be sensitive, and it's tough. And I mean, I think for me, even like being a female, I work in a very male dominated industry. So I didn't have the opportunity to be sensitive, because I would have left a couple weeks in if I was sensitive. It's not only is it niche in what we do, but the way everything is run and the way we operate is very different than, you know, I would say normal. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's an interesting niche. I mentioned that in
yeah,
our other conversation too, and we talked about it a little bit earlier in this conversation. Your real estate journey it's a niche
yeah,
within the industry, and it's pretty unique. So yeah, it's not. I get what you're saying. It's not
yeah.
quote normal,
But no, but it's
but yeah,
helpful because I can give multiple different angles on different sides of stuff for that
yeah,
reason. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that concept of dealing and coping with rejection and being able to handle it professionally and move forward, continue to move the sales journey and the sales process forward is something that sales professionals really need to wrap their head around and get comfortable with early. The earlier
yes,
the better, and seek coaching and guidance and advice on how to grow that part of your expertise and your repertoire, so to speak. So
right,
yeah.
absolutely,
The second point I wanted to talk to you about, something um, that you've elaborated on quite a bit, both through your nonprofit journey and I'm assuming also in the forthcoming book, and that is the key to strong follow up.
yeah, yeah. So I would say, I mean, the one thing is we're all so busy. I mean, we're also very distracted. There's something everywhere we turn, and what we have to separate ourselves from is when we think that, we're sending a text, or we're making a call, or we're leaving a voicemail, or sending an email. That's what we're doing at the moment. But the person on the other end probably has 18 other things that they're doing. So it's almost putting yourself in their shoes and understanding that just because you sent them a text message, or you called them twice, or you've left them a voicemail, doesn't mean they've heard it. Because I even know personally, somebody sometimes has to text me like 5 times for me to be like, okay, I'm so sorry, I've been busy, right? So continuing to follow up with people, continuing to play that bug in their ear, and being really intentional with it. I actually wrote an article recently kind of about an intentional follow up. And rather than coming off, insincere or just trying to blare people down, it's really being specific about, conversations you've had with them, or if you haven't touched them, being really specific about something that you can offer them, and like, but not being over the top too much to where, you feel like you're wasting their time. And I think that's the other thing is, salespeople, they hear calls, they're just like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be like a super long conversation and just super pitchy. Whereas if you can be really upfront when you're following up with people, like, hey, I'm just here to see if it's worth your time because I don't want to waste mine and I'm not here to waste yours, right? What are you looking for? How can I help you? And getting straight to the point. And that's usually really helpful when it comes down to following up because one, you're not going to waste your time if you can get to hear what they say, but also let them know and acknowledge, like, hey, I'm here for you to help you. But if it's not going to work, I'm going to let you know. So,
And you seem to allude a little bit to that a concept of like personalizing your follow up as well, and also
mhm.
adding context to that follow up instead of the canned, you know, automated type follow up. Really, you know, taking a little extra time and care to add some context to that follow up.
Absolutely. I mean, it helps because I am an author. So when I, it's funny. I end up writing some extra stuff for like my sales team with their writing stuff. So I'll write text or emails or tweak things. So it does definitely help on the communication side. I mean, communication's key. I say if you can mix old school values with new technology, so strong eye connection, firm handshake, but you can still communicate very well and fluid on a text message or an email, and it does seem personalized, it doesn't seem auto generated, and you can master those two things. You're constantly building trust from the beginning. So
Fortunes in the follow up.
yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, 100%.
The next point I wanted to talk about is, and it kind of builds on the last point about follow up, and that is building and fostering relationships.
Absolutely. I mean, I always say like life is sales because it's sales is communication and relationships, right? So going from being able to effectively communicate, but then also building those relationships on the front end and taking them and fostering them is really important because anybody successful in real estate will say the majority as they build is coming from their referrals, right? And a really wise mentor once told me, people will buy from you if they like you, but they'll refer you if they trust you. And I think that's huge because, especially in real estate, like you want to start building what we call, or like what I necessarily call, and this is also a mentor that helped me, what a VIP list. And that VIP list are people that you have a really good relationship with that is kind of mutual, right? You stay in touch, whether you go to coffee or you just catch up, but they'll refer you, you refer them. And a lot of the times, people that are on those lists have very successful businesses or they're entrepreneurs. So it can be a mutually beneficial relationship, but they're going to be sending you people constantly, right? So it's fostering those relationships are so important because you can get to a point where you don't need new leads because your leads that you've already have are working for you. And that's where the fortunes really build and the follow-up, but also the fostering of the relationships and communicating consistently and effectively and efficiently and authentically is huge. So
They'll buy from you if they like you, but they'll refer you if they trust you. And I mean, that's powerful. I like that, how that encapsulates a very powerful concept. And to me, you know, obviously, if a client is referring you, they trust you, but they have to trust you because part of that referral is they're transferring some of their trust, you know,
exactly.
to as well. So so their reputation's on the line as well when they refer.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean that's where you can see the differentiation in I would say your average people to like your top producers, and it is because they do a great job at fostering those relationships and building them. And not to say that they don't have people, like I'm not saying that like the top producer and then your person down here doesn't have a ton of referrals. It's the way that they're probably communicating and effectively keeping up with it.
Hmm.
So, and I mean, I believe any sort of company that's just like a referral program. Like there's data about how important referral programs are and how successful they are for any company. But when you're a real estate agent or, an entrepreneur, like you're your own company. So it's your job to continue to build that database. And for me, even like on my professional side, like my clients that I have a really strong relationship with are so supportive with my book and nonprofit, and they're putting me in touch with different people. So it's not just avenues for making other money in one way, but they can help you on so many different other ways. So I think that's super, super important to note as well.
Yeah, and it's worth underscoring again the importance of nurturing that list, so to speak, of your clients and continuing to develop those relationships even after the sale or after they purchase. And that's really where you really have an opportunity to continue to build that trust
Absolutely. And
and
they'll
then grow
reload.
those. Yeah,
They'll buy more.
yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. The last point that we're going to talk about is the importance of authenticity, the concept of authenticity. We hear it a lot. We've heard it a lot over the last few years in different contexts, for sure. Share a little bit of your tips and advice in that space.
Well, I think so. Authenticity is actually the highest emotional frequency like on the earth. It's 40 times like greater than love. And I think it's it's not underrated or undervalued because we know about it, but I don't think it's put out there enough because naturally nowadays with these standards here, social media and telling us what we should do here, we kind of hide ourselves, I feel like, to who we really are. And we feel like we have to be doing it this way or we should be doing it that way. When really it's just like show up, be you, have a real conversation, and be genuine when you're doing it, right? Having that genuine interest in somebody and what they want is so powerful, especially now when people just think that they're constantly being sold all over the place. So showing up authentically as you, and that really is as simple as it is. It's just being yourself. And in sales, it's so important. I was actually I'm mentoring a college student right now, and I was telling him last night, I said, in sales, you have to like what you're selling. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to sell it, right? I mean, maybe some people can, but I know him. He's a super bright kid, and he's like me. Like I'm an empath, and I can't really bullshit you very well. like if I don't like it, I'm not gonna be able to sell it, right?
Yeah.
I have anybody's best interest, and there's been multiple times where I've had even tours and showings, and I was like, this probably isn't for you, just knowing what we're talking about. But, in the next month, I'm going to have this. I think you should wait. And I've sold way more property than by doing that, by being real, than I have by trying to force a close on that day. Right. And I mean, there's different situations for different things, but I mean, I had one situation where I had a family come up, could have sold them a lot that day. We were standing on it. They kind of liked it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to have a new release of properties in the next month. I think it might be better to wait. This one might be gone. So if you love it, we can call it off. But knowing what you're looking for, I think this inventory is be better for you. They brought 4 friends, all of them bought. So I went from selling 1 lot to 4 lots, right? So that's a big difference. But that is because they're like, hey, this girl's real. She's telling me what's up. And I think you all should come check it out. So that's kind of in a full circle. It's being authentically you, but also being honest with, who you are, what you're doing, like why you like doing it, and also explaining that to your customer.
That's where that trust comes in too. Yeah,
Exactly.
right. You're really obviously that your clients already liked you, but by being showing your authentic self and being upfront with them and being yourself and sharing your thoughts like that honestly really built some trust with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I also the idea of also how we have a tendency to want to please everyone. That concept kind of came to mind as you were saying. Be yourself, be authentic, show up as your real self. And I think that a lot of times we try to show up as a neutral, generic self because we don't want to alienate anyone. But I think by really being ourselves, we get closer to the people who we're meant to serve, who are our ideal clients, and because you're always going to alienate someone. We can't possibly serve everyone.
No, exactly. And I think it's, the one advice my dad gave me and it's helped me so much in my sales career is control what you can control. Because in sales, a lot of things are out of your control, but a
Hmm.
lot is also in your control. But if usually when we have anxiety in general, we're worried about things that are out of our control, things that we can't control, rather than focusing on what we can in that very moment. And being us and showing up as the real us. And really, I say in my book, the version of us that the world deserves to see, which is the real you, we're in control of that. And even like I said, in being in professionally, personally, anytime I've done something that I've stayed true to or shown up as exactly what I believe in, or, truly genuinely in the best interest of not only myself, but the other person, it's always turned out for the best. So
I love that. I love that we got to talk a little bit about the authenticity, and the also you mentioned empath and how it, we really have to love and believe in what we're selling. And I think, yeah, honestly, I think, sure, there are folks who may not have to, but an empath is going to have to. And I think anyone who's, you know, has a strong conscience is really going to need to believe strongly in what they're selling. One other thing I want to add, though, before I forget, I had a sales manager and not in the real estate business, in another industry I was in early. This was 25 years ago, early in my career, one of my first commission sales jobs, and one of the best sales managers I ever worked for. And I followed him to multiple companies, and I think, had more closes in his book than Grant Cardone. Like, the guy just
I love that.
he could overcome any objection, and he was helping me close a deal, and we just couldn't get it done. We just objection. We overcame everything, and somehow still weren't able to close the deal, and we parted ways with the buyer. No, nothing personal, just business. And later he said to me, he goes, "Jeff, there are two objections that I just can't overcome." He said, "Ignorance and poverty."
It's so true though. And it really is. You get to the point too when you're starting to get to the close, and sometimes it's harder. I mean, I always like, you're closing almost all the time when you're building that relationship, building the trust through the conversations. But when it gets to the end of it, right? And you know when it's ignorance or poverty, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's so true, and you're just like, are you kidding?
Yeah.
It's at that point you're just like, I can't, like, I'm, and then at that no, then you're just like, okay, we're gonna close the book on that no. We're
Yeah,
good. We're gonna
yeah,
take
yeah.
that no and move on. That's an L, and I'm cool with that L. We're
That's an
gonna
L. You got to take your L and move on. Yeah.
exactly.
I mean, no one's going to close 100%. And I mean, the more highly trained and skilled and knowledgeable you are in overcoming objections and building that trust and relationships and so forth, obviously it's going to increase your percentages. But nobody closes 100%, and you're just not going to get, you're not going to come to terms with every client. So yeah, that
No,
brought back some
absolutely.
memories. I hadn't thought about that in a while, but
I like that. Ignorance and poverty.
yeah.
Just two simple words.
Yeah,
It's so
not,
true though.
yeah, you reach a point where you just throw in the towel.
I Yeah, I'm already thinking of some of those L's that I've taken under both of those
Yeah.
objections, and I was bringing back some memories of my own, so I
Yep.
completely understand.
All right. First of all, before I'm going to ask you, I want listeners to be able to find out how they can learn more about you and connect with you. But before we get there, I do want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join this particular podcast, which is launching. You're one of the first, one of my early guests, and no one ever likes to go first. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking a chance on me and helping me launch this thing. This has been really, really great.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I love going first. I actually do a cold plunge every morning with my boyfriend, and within the first 5 minutes I get up, I've just started doing this over the past couple weeks, and I won't let him go first. Like, I'm like, let me just get it done, So completely off the topic, but I trust me, I'm super thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me. So
Absolutely. No, it's been a pleasure. Kayla, I really appreciate it. Share with listeners how they can learn more about you and your work and connect with you. And of course, learn more about your nonprofit and your book.
yeah, so my website, kaylalogue.com, has all the ways you can connect with me, social. It has a ton of information about my book. You can pre-order it there. My nonprofit's on there as well. The pre-order phase for my book is actually going on now. The launch date is May 28th. And anybody that does pre-order before that day is getting a personalized email from me with additional bonus journal prompts, because I've mentioned journaling and we've talked about that even on the other podcast. But you'll get a message from me, some extra journal prompts. And I'm also going to be sending invites to my launch party for a signing event. It'll be mixed with a fundraising event for the nonprofit as well. So really the best way to reach me is from my website. Kayla Logue _ is also my Instagram. But yeah, I'd love to hear from anybody.
I will have those links, of course, in the show notes for this episode, in the description for the video, and would encourage our subscribers to reach out and connect with you and definitely check out the book. Kayla Logue is an epic agent.
I love that. I'm going to put that as my title.
She's an entrepreneur, founder of a nonprofit, and now an author. Kayla, thanks so much for joining the podcast. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it as well.